Live from the Pioneer PBS studios in Granite Falls, it's Meet the Candidates. This candidate forum is designed to inform you, the viewing public, about the candidates running for Minnesota state office in our region. Meet the Candidates is brought to you by the members of Pioneer PBS. This program features the candidates for Minnesota Senate District 17. And now, your moderator for tonight's program, Mark Fokin.
Hello, and welcome to Meet the Candidates. I'm Mark Fokin. This Pioneer PBS presentation is intended to inform you about the candidates who seek election or re-election to the Minnesota Legislature. This segment features candidates who are on the ballot in Senate District 22. They are incumbent Republican Senator Andrew Lang and his challenger, DFL candidate Fernando Alvarado. First, a few words about the district and the communities within it.
Minnesota Senate District 17 is made up of Swift, Chippewa, and Kandiyohi counties, and most of Renville County. Major cities include Willmar, Montevideo, and Benson.
If you reside in this district, your questions will be given priority for the candidate answers. All Minnesotans, regardless of residency, are encouraged to join this conversation. Our intention is to let our viewers gain an understanding of legislative priorities. Please direct your questions via the methods listed on the bottom of the screen. Now, let's meet tonight's candidates. By a coin toss, the candidates have determined the order in which they will appear with their opening statement. We will start with Fernando Alvarado, the DFL challenger from Willmar.
Hi, my name is Fernando Alvarado, and I am the DFL endorsed Senate candidate for Senate District 17. I was born and raised in northern New York, grew up in a rural community where the landscape was spotted with dairy farms. I joined the Navy when I was 17 and served on the USS Groton fast attack submarine. After being discharged, honorably discharged, I went to Mankato State where I began living in Minnesota in 1980. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree from Mankato State University, where I met my wife, and we have resided in Willmar for the last 34 years. We've raised two daughters through the Willmar School District, and we're very proud of the opportunity that the school district presented to our daughters, not only academically, but real-world experience by living with multicultural diversification in the community. I'm a member of the Willmar City Council for the last three and a half years, serving on the Public Works Committee, the Labor Committee. I'm on the sales tax task force for Robbins Island, and I'm on the Willmar City Council task force for the community center and city offices. I'm past president of Willmar Cardinals Pride, past president of the West Central Woodcarvers, and past president of Willmar Area Racing Stingrays, which taught me the importance of working together collaboratively with other parties. I want to bring that experience and that understanding of working with others to the Senate and get things done for jobs, infrastructure, and affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. And now we'll go to incumbent Senator Andrew Lang for his opening statement.
Well, thank you, Mark, and I appreciate Pioneer Public for putting this this forum together, the debate. Again, thanks for doing that. Just to reintroduce myself a little bit for the folks that don't know me out there, I am a lifelong resident of District 17. Was born and raised in Willmar, grew up in Kandiyohi, attended high school, graduated in 1997, which is unfortunately well over 20 years ago already. Did 2 years out at Ridgewater College, got an engineering degree there, ended up going to St. Cloud State and pursuing aviation science and management. I ended up following the aviation career field later on after college by joining the military. I'm currently in my 19th year of service. I've been deployed on a couple different occasions, both times to Iraq. It's been a complete honor. I'm super proud of the things that I've accomplished over the last 4 years. I'm super grateful for some of the conversations and the guidance that I've got from some folks in the past, and I appreciate the support I've gotten from all the citizens of District 17 as I've gone through this crazy adventure of being a senator. As far as the Senate goes, I do sit on both Ag, Rural Finance, Housing Authority committees, both the Finance and Policy committees. I sit on the Environmental Policy and Finance committees. I sit on the Ag committee. I sit on Transportation. I sit on Lessard-Sams, and I also sit on the Emergency Services Regulatory Board. So I have what you would call a full load as far as the Senate is concerned. So I look forward to the conversation this evening.
Thank you. Before we start the questions, just a quick reminder to the viewers at home that you can learn how to register to vote in Minnesota and find your voting location on the Minnesota Secretary of State's website. That's mnvotes.org. Now let's get started. As a reminder, the rules are that each question will be asked to both candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. Both candidates will also have the opportunity for a 1-minute rebuttal if they so choose. We will alternate which candidate gets asked each question first. Now, our first question goes to DFL challenger Fernando Alvarado. What are the most important challenges facing your district, and what do you propose to address them?
I believe that the most challenging things for Senate District 17 are jobs and addressing COVID-19. I think what we have to do is promote safety for the residents of Senate District 17, educate on the importance of taking care of each other, considering it a random act of kindness. What I worry about is if we do not address the pandemic seriously, many people will get sick, possibly die, and we can't afford to lose anybody. And if we're losing medical people or educators, those people with those skills cannot be replaced readily. So the two things I believe we have to focus on is safety for the residents of Candy High as we address the COVID-19. This is a serious pandemic. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and he said it just literally knocked the wind out of him, and he could hardly walk from where he milked cows to the next station. So it's a very serious disease. So I believe that's the number one problem. And then coming out of the COVID, we want to have people ready to work. So we want to be able to make sure that there's a job force available for them to be active in the community after we get a handle on the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. And now, Senator Andrew Lang, the same question for you. What are the most important challenges facing your district, and what do you propose to address them?
Well, thank you, Mark. As I was listening to what Fernando was saying here, I was jotting a few things down. I talked to a couple of business owners today that talked about their need for increasing workers. How do we get people to come to West Central Minnesota, work for a business, raise a family, and stay here once the family is raised? How do we get them to stay in Minnesota? How do we get them to retire? How do we minimize the impact of the COVID virus? How do we look at the financial aspects of all these businesses that are being affected by it? And how do we minimize that? Farming is a huge issue in our district. It's one of the main driving factors of all businesses that operate within, whether it's seed businesses, whether it's sugar beet co-ops, whether it's power co-ops. All those things are going to be affected. Some of the ways we're going to do that is reducing taxes. We're going to try to get this 179 done yet this fall. There's some opportunity to get the bonding bill passed. I think there's some good movement being done over the last couple of weeks. But ultimately, over the next few months, 6 to 8 months to be exact, the number one item that we're going to be dealing with on a statewide basis is going to be the budget. I hope we will talk a little bit more about this later on, but right now we're looking at most likely a 4.7 and increasing the closer we get to November's forecast. That's going to be the first and foremost as far as the state is concerned, and the things, how are we going to react? How are we going to adjust to that? So there's a multitude of issues that we're going to have in District 17 coming into the 2021 year and legislative session, but I think budget is going to be first and foremost.
Thank you, Senator Lang. And now we'll go to Mr. Alvarado for a 1-minute rebuttal.
I noticed when my opponent was talking, he didn't talk about the gravity of the situation with COVID. I don't think that we can just brush over it and think that it's going to go away or disappear. This is going to be a serious situation going forward. We're starting to see numbers go up. States around us that did not practice safe protocols are seeing numbers go up. So I think we have to consider the way the Republican Party is addressing COVID and the safety of the citizens of SD 17. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question goes to first to Senator Andrew Lang, and it is regarding the COVID-19 situation. Given the current situation with COVID-19, do you agree with extending emergency powers? And the viewer asks you to explain your answer.
The answer is no. I don't think that after 7 months of emergency orders that we need to continue this. I think as a legislature, I think as a state of Minnesota, whether it's the governor, the House, and the Senate, we can work together and we can work on this together. We don't need to do it individually. I think that initially when that law was written, that both the House, the Senate, and the governor probably didn't foresee this extended of an emergency order to be taking place. I can tell you that I agreed with the governor when he declared an emergency order. The first 30 days when I sure agreed with him when he closed businesses down, and I thought it was a necessary step. I was there that Tuesday night when he made the announcement that restaurants were going to be closing, and I can tell you that I agreed with it at that point. As time has gone on, I think the legislature needs to be involved in what's going on. I sure think that it should be involved with where the money is going. That needs to be distributed evenly throughout the state, especially in small rural hospitals like we have here in Montevideo or Benson or Olivia, where we're not seeing those dollars where they should be distributed to. The vast majority of those dollars have been going to the metro area, and that's a problem for me. I think the legislature needs to be involved. I think the governor needs to end his emergency orders and get us back to St. Paul where we can make some group decisions like we should be.
Thank you. And now the same question to Mr. Alvarado. Given the current situation with COVID-19, do you agree with extending emergency powers? Explain your answer.
Yes, I believe it's proper to have somebody in charge, and I believe the governor has made it very aware that he's willing to work with many people on many different levels to practice safe and protocols for all. He's not limiting it to just his immediate circle. He's looking for suggestions from all parties. I believe he's reached across the aisle to the other party to see what they can present. But for whatever reason, it's easier to disagree than to try to work out a solution. So I would encourage communication, empathetic listening, cooperation. This is a serious disease. Numbers are going up. It's going to affect our children, our older people. It could affect me. I'm, people that have pre-existing conditions. I believe that we have to maintain somebody in charge to provide the direction that the state needs to keep the citizens of Senate District 17 safe. So I want to work with Governor Walz and to maintain some direction. So yes, I believe it's the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to Mr. Alvarado. Do you think Minnesota elections are vulnerable to fraud?
No. I do not believe our elections are vulnerable to fraud. I believe that we have been practicing safe election protocols for years. And Minnesota is a leader in election protocols. We just heard on the news tonight, you've got to have a driver's license, a Social Security, there's a barcode. Mail-in election ballots have been going on since the Civil War. So do I believe that they're subject to fraud? No. I believe it's, in this day and age, they have protocols in place to protect the voting public, whether by mail or absentee. I believe it's safe and effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado. And now, Senator Lang, the same question for you. Do you think Minnesota elections are vulnerable to fraud?
Absolutely. They totally are vulnerable to fraud. I think we've seen examples of it in Wisconsin. We've seen examples of it in the East Coast. I'm absolutely concerned about the mail-in ballots, the lack of having a witness to your signature, the lack of timing when it comes to the time when you could mail that ballot in. Up to the Secretary of State in Minnesota right now, Steve Simon, is in a lawsuit because he wants to extend that 10 days beyond the election as far as being postmarked when they can get those ballots and be counted. We're going to have a big issue if we continue down this road and lose some of our safeguards when it comes to elections. I'm very concerned. I think most of the citizens within the district should be concerned about this when it comes to the integrity of all of our elections. The safest way is to vote in person. Hand carry your ballot, whether it's an absentee ballot or if it is a mail-in ballot, hand carry it and deliver it yourself. Get it to those post office, or get it, even in the post office, we've seen some issues in Wisconsin where the ballots were thrown in a ditch. I'm very concerned, and I think that most Americans probably share my concern.
Thank you, Senator Lang. Our next question first goes to Senator Lang, and it comes to us from a viewer in Wilmer. How would you ensure every Minnesotan has health care?
Well, there's a couple of things that we've been working on pretty hard. One of those things is price transparency. And that's the main way that we get everybody insured or get everybody covered, is to have transparency and know what we're paying for things. There's been a big movement over the last few years to know what you pay for an ambulance ride, know what you pay for a helicopter ride to go to a hospital. Those are things that in the past there has been a lot of confusion on, a lot of you wouldn't know what you paid until after you probably got the bill in the mail. Another thing that has been an issue, and this is the state of Minnesota, is we require our healthcare plans to be very comprehensive. Some of the younger individuals that oftentimes are cheaper to insure, if you look at plans and you have what we consider a Cadillac healthcare plan, but you can only afford a Honda Accord, you should maybe have a Honda Accord plan. On the opposite end of the scale, if you have a Cadillac plan but you're paying for 3 Cadillac plans, that's been an issue. Where it really becomes an issue is those people that are in the middle. Those people that are making that $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, and they're paying $2,500 a month for health care coverage. It's unaffordable to them. Even though they have a good living wage, they have a good job, and they're paying their bills and living their life, their health care costs are too big of a percentage of what that is. There are ways that we can look to our past, see that what used to work when it came to the true Minnesota care prior to the Affordable Care Act. And I think that's where we should start. Go back to what worked just a short time ago. We're going to have some federal involvement in that. We cannot do it only as a state. But price transparency, get the costs down, and then have adjustability between the plans.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. And now the same question for you, Mr. Alvarado. How would you ensure that every Minnesotan has health care?
Thank you. That's a difficult question. It's a national issue. The American people, Senate District 17, this is the United States of America. We shouldn't be having to deal with this in 2020, and it's sad that we are. I like the fact that Senator Walz is working on a program now to encourage people to go to MNsure to buy certain products that would fit them. And I believe that will cause some competition to occur, and competition is what makes us so great. It will help drive prices down. I agree with Senator Lang. when he says that there should be price transparency so people can shop around for some of the services that they need. But we have to be creative at the state level, but we also have to encourage our federal senators and representatives to come up with a comprehensive plan for everybody. And I think it's important that as a senator for the state of Minnesota, I want to work with those members of Congress to encourage some sort of resolution to the healthcare problem. So it's going to take cooperation, hard work, and we're going to have to get our hands dirty to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado. Our next question goes first to you. What will you do to support a vibrant economy in our area?
What a great question. You know, we're fortunate in Senate District 17 to be blessed with a multicultural diversity. I get excited about the different communities in Milan, the micro-Asian community. Wilmer's got the Somali population. There's Hispanic populations throughout the district. You know, we have to promote their drive for business. We have to come up with ideas that can stimulate the desire to grow business. You know, we have to look at other communities and say, hey, that's a good idea. We should try that here. We should encourage those that have the means to help fund some of the creativity so we can get people to want to do things in the community. I was just thinking about it today to myself. Wouldn't it be wonderful if there was somebody that wanted to open a pottery barn in Lake Lillian, or some sort of art something or other in Appleton? Those are things that get people coming to the community, spending money, and starting to promote what that community has. But it has to take collaboration, creativity, and a willingness to say, yes, let's make that work. Cooperation, imagination, creativity, we can do this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Lang, the same question for you. What will you do to support a vibrant economy in our area?
Well, thanks, Mark, and I think it's kind of ironic how we first started talking about priorities through the district and how those priorities, the same list I wrote down at the beginning of the debate here, is the same list I would say that I would support to make that economy grow. We have to have housing, whether it's workforce housing or single-family housing. We need to have the state step away from that. Over the last couple of years, we've been working very hard in the Housing Committee trying to cut costs, trying to make it affordable for a single family to have that home in Wilmer, in Montevideo, in Benson, in Fairfax, all those places that if you need to build a home, the price has gone up so high, and it's been a challenge over the last few years. So I was serious about when I said we need to minimize the impact financially with the COVID crisis. That has been something where small businesses, restaurants, even the gas stations of the area have shown a great deal of decrease of revenue, a great deal of, and we see that at the state level on a tax revenue decrease. That's something that's completely concerning for me. Farming issues throughout District 17, they're a vital portion of the economy. So how do we support farming? We need to support it when we're talking about young beginning farmers. We need to support it when we talk about restructuring loans in the beginning, in the middle, and the end of your farming life. We need to talk about helping farmers with their mental health. We've done so with farm advocates. We've continued to add to that over the last few years. But ultimately, one of the closest areas I've really been working is trying to do away with the Social Security tax. We need to have retirees stay within the state of Minnesota. We have a great deal of wealth that leaves this state every year. We see it in the income tax revenue rolls, and the folks that move into the state, the average person that moves out of the state brings with them $135,000 of annual salary. The person moving into the state is around $27,000. That's a financial impact that we can't sustain over a long period of time. So. And then again, the budget. We need to worry about the budget. That is an economic impact factor that we're going to have to work on next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lang. And now we'll go to Mr. Alvarado for a 1-minute rebuttal.
One of the things I thought about while Senator Lang was talking was the logjam we're having at the Senate right now with passing a budget for infrastructure, a bonding bill. It's been tied up and it's slowing down the growth and growth in jobs for Minnesota. And I believe that we have to get that bonding bill passed, get people to work, get people going to the local restaurants, and have that money trickle through the community. So I think it's important that we focus on that and get that going also. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll return to Mr. Lang for a 1-minute rebuttal.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I was going to touch on the bonding bill for just a split second. That has some very preliminary agreement, I think, in the next special session, of which we've had several this year. In the next special session, we're going to be addressing that. Section 179 tax conformity is probably going to be along with that. It's going to be a pretty productive session, I believe, if we can get those two things passed.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to Senator Lang, and it comes to us from a viewer in Olivia, and we're staying on the theme of the budget, which was mentioned earlier. How can we balance the budget without increasing taxes?
Well, this is my biggest concern. This is something that since the beginning of the COVID crisis that we've kept our eyes closely on. Right now, the preliminary abbreviated forecast, we go by budget forecasts that happen in February and November. Right now, the best guess we have is $4.7 billion. That's about 10% of the annual budget. 10% of the biennial budget. That's a significant problem. I can tell you that if it goes above that or wherever, we cannot tax ourselves out of that hole. That's a hole we dug for ourselves, or COVID dug for us last spring. That hole is never going to go. We cannot fill that hole with taxes. Minnesota's a balanced budget state. We cannot run into a deficit. So how do we do that? It's simple. We need to start looking for cost-cutting measures. There's going to be all kinds of issues that we're going to have to try to address next year. It's not going to be easy. I'm not looking forward to trying to cut dollars out of any of the funds that we've been putting money into for the last 4 years. I can tell you there's probably people that are going to face a tough challenge in their election because of the tough choices they're going to make in the spring of 2021 when it comes to the state budget. I sure hope that it maintains that 4.7 and we don't go to that $6 or $7 billion range, because then we're really going to be hurting. It's going to be tough. How do we keep our schools funded? How do we keep our roads and bridges being built? How do we keep that LGA, that CPA going to our small cities and our counties? Those are vital sources of income for those places that, for sure face an uphill battle. That's what concerns me. That's what we've been talking about for several months. It's not going to be easy.
Thank you, Senator Lang. And now, Mr. Alvarado, the same question for you. How would you respond to this viewer in Olivia? How can we balance the budget without increasing taxes?
We have a difficult problem. 4.7, up to 6, possibly 7 billion. We can't cut from programs that affect our young people. We can't cut programs that are going to affect those vulnerable. They're always the first ones to take a hit. We're going to have to look at a bigger picture. We're going to have to look at the problem globally. We're going to have to address it fairly. When you know there's a problem, you start to address it before you get there. Of course, COVID was different. COVID came on. We were ill prepared. We tried to back things down, but we're in a situation that it's going to have to take a global view. We're going to have to look at, realistically, I'm afraid we're going to have to talk taxes. We're going to have to address it. It's going to take a team effort. It's going to take collaboration, understanding, patience, a belief that we can work together and get out of this program. I don't want to cut programs that are going to affect those that are already in in need. And I worry about that for our citizens of Senate District 17. They're hurting already. We can't make them hurt more. So it's going to take a global look at everything. We're going to have to put everything on the table. We're going to have to make some tough decisions, and it's going to affect us all. And Minnesotans are used to pulling together when they have to. Row the boat. You know, we're going to have to row the boat together on this one, and we'll do it. Minnesotans get things done. We will do it, but it's not going to be an easy pill to swallow. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. Our next question goes first to Mr. Alvarado, and it comes to us from a viewer in Atwater. What can the state of Minnesota do about depleting groundwater resources and declining quality of water in our lakes and rivers?
You know, we have to monitor our water situation and the use of the water. We have to probably look at how often can you put in a well in your field. We're tapping into those readily. I don't know how regulated they are. I believe we have to be smart about tapping into our water resources. We have to make sure that we're not applying nitrogen at the wrong time. We have to educate to make sure we're using the various products properly. I think that the buffer zones are a good start, and that's going to help the farmer. I think we have to reward the farmer for taking those acres off the growing fields and give them some compensation for that, for allowing buffer zones to help filter out debris and pesticides and herbicides into the water system. We have to continue to be educated out it. In Willmar, we talk about mowing in. Mow your grass in so that the grass doesn't go down to the sewer, filter into the lakes, and then phosphorus and algae grow. We have to watch that. It's going to take education. They do it at the state fair all the time. The Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and Pollution Control is constantly educating. So it's going to take education, and we're going to have to monitor who's tapping into the aquifers. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Lang, the same question for you. What can the state of Minnesota do about depleting groundwater resources and the declining quality of water in our lakes and rivers?
Well, that's actually two parts to this. It's two different questions. So we have to talk about water quality issues. When it comes to water quality in the, any waterway that's been on the deferred waterway list, that number has increased. However, some of the resources that have gone into the water quality standards that puts those on that impaired waterway list has increased, so that it proportionally has gone up. When it comes to aquifers, and throughout the state, we've had varying success. One that comes to mind is up towards Belgrade. There's an Irrigators Association that has had several test wells dug over the last few years, and they've invited me to some of their events. And we've talked multiple times on the fact that the aquifer level has rapidly changed up and down, and not so with rainfall or usage. It isn't necessarily direct related. They've been working hand in hand with the DNR for years, trying to understand that, trying to figure out why those aquifers are the way they are. As far as water quality standards go, Fernando did touch on buffer strips. We have worked on a lot of different things with the University of Minnesota, our soil and water conservation districts over the last few years when it comes to best management practices. How does a farmer apply in congruence with both the chemical manufacturer and the preferred method with what the University of Minnesota recommends? Some of those results are water quality that has increased. I think the Minnesota River has been an example of where water quality has increased on such a great level over the last several decades that it's it's great news. I think we're learning a lot as a society. I think we have a lot of teamwork and effort going into that. When it comes to the aquifers and how we relate to that, some of the things that the DNR has brought up over the last few years has been calcareous fens and where they are and some of the water that comes out of those and how they relate to aquifers. And it's a lot of information that's far above my head, but I'm trying to maintain it as much as possible. So thank you, Mark.
All right, thank you. Our next question goes first to Senator Lang, and it comes to us from a viewer in Maynard. What can the state legislature do about the desperate lack of childcare here in western Minnesota?
Well, we've tried a couple of different things. One is incentivizing childcare workers paying for school, incentivizing some of those daycare centers. We have in the past worked very hard on that assistance. That's something where in the past has had kind of a bad rap on where it was spent. Some of the funds that had been misappropriated through the state of Minnesota and ultimately through the Department of Human Services and through a lot of work from the legislature, honestly. I think we have a product nowadays that is much more reliable and for sure much more comfortable from my point of view. There is a lot of, realistically, part of the problem is that it's a lot of hours for low pay. So how do you help those daycare moms or those daycare centers to exist? Representative Baker and myself worked kind of hand in hand with the YMCA in Willmar to develop a new daycare center in Spicer. I can say that I think that took a load off. I mean, we really had a shortfall in daycare slots in Willmar. Throughout the district, that is. I think there was upwards of 1,300 slots throughout the district that we're trying to fill. And part of it is how do you do that? Can you use schools? In the past, we've looked at using schools, after-school programs, and addressing those in such a way that it doesn't interfere with the private businesses going on or their income that they are getting from these folks and their families. So it's been a big issue. I think we are slowly but surely tackling it. I'm sure it'll come up again in the near future.
Thank you. Mr. Alvarado, the same question for you. What can the state legislature do about the desperate lack of childcare here in western Minnesota?
Thank you. Well, I agree that we were fortunate that we've done some collaboration in Willmar. But we have to create, and this is where I agree with Senator Lang, we have to come up with incentives for people to get involved with daycare. We have to work with our businesses and get them to commit to daycare centers and help their employees. It becomes a win-win situation when a worker knows that that child of theirs is being taken care of properly. And if they want to go down and see them during their lunch hour, they know that they can do that. It becomes a win for the business. It becomes a win for the parent. So it's going to take some collaboration and cooperation, talking to the local Chamber of Commerce and saying, hey, how can we solve this problem for our workers? It's going to take some energy, some conversation, some incentives to make this happen for families. It's a serious problem, and it's one that if we work together, we'll be able to solve, but it's going to take, we have to reward those people that take care of our children. They're taking care of the future, so we have to make sure that they're rewarded for that service. And I think we have to collaborate with business, the Chamber of Commerce, and try to come up with solutions in addition to what the Y has done in Willmar and the Somalian community has done for Willmar also. We have to work together to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. Our next question is also for you first, and it is from a viewer in Granite Falls. Is the urban-rural divide in Minnesota a real thing? Why does it exist, and what can be done about it from a policy perspective?
I believe there is a divide between urban and rural. You hear the stories of they go to the supermarket to pick up a carton of milk, and if the farm goes away, they're not worried about it because they go to the store and buy the milk. They don't know where the product comes from. So I believe there is a real divide. Bridging the divide I think is going to be tricky because everybody believes that their problems are more important than our problems, or our problems are more important than their problems. So we all have issues that we have to work on together. We have to educate and say, hey, our people need services out here in greater Minnesota. We need to maintain our quality of education. We need to have broadband. You know, a lot of that stuff is in the urban areas, it's there. They got competition with various cable companies and telephone companies and that sort of thing. We have to educate them about our needs out here. There is a divide. Should it be? No. We should have the same services. We should have, broadband that is competitive so that we can compete at the national level for our local businesses. Our education should not be second-rate a school in the Twin Cities. So it's going to take cooperation. It's going to take collaboration. Again, I'm going to have to meet with senators in the urban areas and say, hey, I'll help you, you help me. And then we'll be able to bridge things. So yes, there is a divide, and it can be bridged. Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Lang, the same question for you. Is the urban-rural divide in Minnesota a real thing? Why does it exist, and what can be done about it from a policy perspective?
As to the why, I can't tell you why it exists necessarily. I think it's a difference of learning experiences. I think it's where people grow up. You tend to have different values within your life. I can tell you that the urban-rural divide is greater than that of party divide. Oftentimes I think over the last few years I've spoke of the bipartisanship that goes on a daily basis in St. Paul. It's something that we don't talk about a whole lot. The rural and urban divide, or the greater Minnesota and the metro, the way I call it, has been an issue in the past. It's been an issue of funding. When we talk about educational funding, our kids in Western Minnesota are not getting the same dollar value that they are in downtown Minneapolis or downtown St. Paul. That's the truth of it. Those school districts have far greater taxing authority than ours do. They have a far greater tax base. I would argue that they probably need less money than what our districts do. There are differences in finance in the transportation field. I think just a couple of years ago we had an example of something that's called Corridors of Commerce. Corridors of Commerce was developed within the Department of Transportation to put dollars into western or outstate or greater Minnesota roadways that what we consider, Highway 212, 14, Highway 12, 23, those great corridors of commerce where a lot of traffic and business traffic and commercial traffic uses. And I think you saw that when the dollar values came out from the Minnesota Department of Transportation, all those dollars were within the 7-county metro area, and they considered that greater Minnesota. It was Elk River, and it was I-94 in Monticello, excuse me. And I think that's part of the biggest battles that we put on in St. Paul, is having to fight for our districts. I think over the last 4 years I've done that on multiple levels, so I appreciate the question.
Thank you. And now we've come to our last question of the evening, and it goes first to Senator Lang. What is your position on allowing undocumented members of our communities to obtain a driver's license?
Well, thank you. I've been pretty open about this one, that I do not support that idea. I've had conversations over the last few years several times with members that would benefit from it. There are provisional driver's licenses that are allowed from the federal government if you're pursuing citizenship. And I think, over the recent past, I've actually sat in a citizenship. I was just talking about it earlier today, that it was a pretty moving experience sitting in the Barn Theater in Wilmer going through a citizenship, oath of citizenship. I think that's the goal. I think we want to have any immigrants that come to the United States of America to become citizens. I know there are some speed bumps to that pathway of citizenship. I'm very concerned that we would try to end around the law. A person now that is pursuing citizenship can have a provisional driver's license. What I would tell you is that it's not cheap. I certainly, although not being a federal representative or senator, think that the immigration system is completely broken. It takes on average 7 years for someone to immigrate legally to the United States of America, and I can't imagine how the cost is to go through that process as well. I don't think that the state of Minnesota should jump between that process. I sure appreciate the thought of it, but yeah, I've never been supportive of the idea.
Thank you. And now the same question for you, Mr. Alvarado. What is your position on allowing undocumented members of our communities the ability to obtain a driver's license?
I believe that is something we have to look at. I believe that people that are driving, a lot of the people that are owning cars and driving vehicles in Minnesota want to be responsible, and they're prohibited from that responsibility by not getting a temporary driver's license. So I believe it would be beneficial for law enforcement, beneficial for the person having the driver's license, allow them to get some insurance and some of those benefits to protect themselves. I think it gives them peace of mind to be able to have something that identifies them. It's not, I don't believe it's an end around citizenship. I believe that it's an opportunity to allow them to be safe, be identified as a person of the community, and allow them to contribute, fairly, and not take advantage of not having a driver's license. I think it would be a good thing for them to have that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. As we conclude this debate, each candidate will offer a 2-minute closing statement. First, we will hear from Republican incumbent Senator Andrew Lang.
Well, thank you, Mark, and I'd like to say a big thank you to Pioneer Public for putting the program on this evening, and I would like to say a big thank you to the citizens of District 17 for trusting me with this position, for speaking with me on a regular basis, and for keeping me informed on the issues and topics that you'd like to talk about. I'd also like to say a big thank you to my wife, Susie, my 2 sons, my mom and dad, my extended family that continues to help me in this campaign, the events that they've helped me put on, the parades we've done throughout the years. A big thank you is owed to them. As I thought about the things I wanted to say for a closing comment, the things that kept coming up in my mind were some of the accomplishments that we've made in District 17 over the last 4 years. We've talked about in Willmar, we have the Child and Adolescent Behavioral Health Hospital that is something that's an asset to the city of Willmar, but the asset to the entire state of Minnesota. We've worked hard at Prairie Lakes trying to get them money to improve and add on to the facility. We've worked in Montevideo for the flood projects. We've worked in Benson, in the Benson biomass plant. There's been projects throughout the state as far as roads and bridges. I've worked hard for township money for roads and bridges. There's been all kinds of these little things that, for the most part, public doesn't get to see, but that really has been a point of pride in myself and the work that I've done over the last 4 years, and I'm very happy to do so. And one of the biggest things that really has meant a lot to me is the Veterans Home in Montevideo. I know for a fact that we wouldn't have got that through if I wouldn't have been elected in 16, and it sure felt good when we got that to happen. I can tell you that it's going to be an asset to West Central Minnesota, and we're going to do well with it. And what I would say is, again, thank you for all the support I've got, and I truly would appreciate your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lang. And now we'll hear from the DFL challenger, Mr. Fernando Alvarado.
Thank you. I want to express my appreciation to Pioneer Public Broadcasting Systems. I want to express my appreciation to the residents of Senate District 17 for the questions and staying up late to watch us tonight. I'm sure there's better things you might have want to do, so I appreciate you being an active part of your community. I want to thank my family, my daughters, and the people that have supported me from day one. It's a humbling experience, and I can't thank you enough for believing in me and giving me this opportunity. If you want a candidate that knows how to work with people, collaborate, and be positive, I'm your guy. I'm the guy to vote for, Fernando Alvarado. That's the person you should vote for. I have to do it on a daily basis. I have to solve problems on a daily basis as a claim guy, and I do it. Is it easy? No. But you know what? I've been taught if you listen empathetically and you try to address a person's needs and concerns, you can solve problems. And I solve problems on a regular basis. We've solved problems for Willmar. We know the importance of passing our bonding bills so we can build roads. This dragging your feet on projects like that only costs jobs, and it costs time, and the expense of picking you up later is more expensive. We've experienced that in Willmar. I don't want to go backwards. I want to move forward. And I think Minnesotans want to move forward together. Together, One Minnesota is my slogan, and I want to do that for the Senate District 17. I want to build Willmar together with the residents of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. That concludes our program. Thanks to both candidates for joining us, and a special thanks to our viewers who sent along their questions. To watch this and other Meet the Candidates episodes, past or present, visit video.pioneer.org or use the free PBS video app. Just choose Pioneer PBS as your local station. Thank you for joining us on Meet the Candidates.